Wake up, Tenno!
Did you start here and you're completely confused? Did you stumble across the funky-looking head in the corner of your nav menu? Did somebody tell you, hey, you gotta do Duviri, Dorid Incarnate Zoic, and you wondered what the they're talking about? Who cares? Whatever reason you're here, Duviri is actually a pretty awesome place. So we're going to dive into everything about Duviri so you can get the most out of it. And going to keep this as spoiler-free as possible, since for some reason now you can actually start in Duviri. If you did this, or if you're just trying to figure out what's going on here and how it relates to anything you've been doing around the rest of the star chart, I'll tell you what I tell everybody who's new. Duviri is definitely worth your time, and you should tackle it early on to get the most benefit out of it. Just think of it like a comic frame where the frame ends, meanwhile, ... So everything in here connects to everything in here, and you'll have to forgive me for the multiple times, so I'll say we'll touch on that in a minute. But I promise we will. As my guides tend to do, here's the shiny overview to give you an idea of how this is all going to be broken down. Let's start this out by looking at the main screen after you click on the head. In the upper right, you'll see what spiral is currently gone and how long until it rotates. There are 5 spirals representing the different moods, and each one is associated with a different character that leads you through the missions, and a different element that the enemies then inherit. Each one of these spirals will last 2 hours and then rotate to another. On this rotation is also when your choice of frame and weapons will cycle naturally, meaning if you see a frame you want to play and it's got 5 minutes left on the timer, you should jump in quick. That being said, as long as you've launched, it will not rotate what you already have until you're done. You can jump in with 30 seconds left, so you keep Saren and stand in Teshin's cave for an hour and Saren will still be your option. These moods also affect whether or not Kullervo's island and thus the Kullervo fight are available. His island will exist in the anger, fear, and sorrow spirals and will be the southern part of your map here. A note here that if you ever don't like your selection, you can enter into the circuit and do one stage then leave. That will cycle your frames and weapons available. There are other things associated with these spirals, but other than the Archarbor that we'll touch on later, they are related typically to specific characters from the story being in certain locations, and functionally there is no reason to care unless you really want to go get a selfie with Wally the Vagabond missing a finger. Toward the bottom center you'll see that you have 3 selectable game mode options: the Circuit, the Duviri Experience, and the Lone Story. If this is your first time here, you have to complete the Lone Story first. That is the core story quest of the Duviri Paradox. These 3 modes each have their primary uses. Replaying the Lone Story gives you a series of 6 mini-missions, much like a bounty on Earth or Deimos would. The last thing you do on these, however, will be to fight the big bad end guy for Duviri, the Orowyrm. We'll go into depth with that later on, and this is the fastest and most efficient way to face off against the Orowyrm, if that's what you're wanting to do. The Duviri Experience gives you the same setup of 6 missions than the Orowyrm, except all of the missions, even the ones not selected for your bounty, will be available and will reward decrees. You can go around all you want in here and do the missions and collect decrees at your own pace. This makes the experience great for a few things, such as farming the Duviri specific materials, farming Intrinsics, and doing the Kullervo fight. We'll touch on all of that deeper in a minute. The final game mode is the Circuit, which again we will dive into in depth here in a bit, but this mode is an endless game mode of a variety of games, including Exterminate, Excavation, Void Flood, Survival, and a fight with the Jackal, and now with Jade Shadows they've added Alchemy in. The rewards from this are what makes Duviri so important, as the Steel Path version of this is where all the renowned Incarnate Genesis adapters come from. Like I said, we'll touch more on that in a bit here. So next we'll move on to the absolute basics, because this is feasibly a starting area. In Duviri, you will spend most of your time as the Drifter, a human who has enemy radar by default, a base health but no shields, and cannot bullet jump or double jump like your Warframe can. The Drifter also takes fall damage, so don't go launching yourself off high up spaces or falling off your horse in midair. The Drifter also has their own set of abilities. The first ability summons a horse called a Kaithe. Pretty self-explanatory, and we'll touch on the horse momentarily. The second ability is Guiding Hand, which sends out a glowing trail to your next objective, presumably so you don't get lost, but after you've been in here a few times it's fairly useless as the map itself doesn't change much. The third ability, probably your most often to be used one, is your Healing Potion. Kind of obvious why it's so used. The fourth ability is a Smoke Grenade that makes you and your teammates invisible while within it. The fifth ability allows transference into your chosen Warframe once your transference bar is filled up. You will start any game mode you choose to play in the same manner, spawning into Teshin's cave as your drifter. When you come in, you'll have options of warframes and weapons to choose from. As your intrinsics level up, more options will become available, and you will be able to see what your options are before you ever come in here, allowing you to pick and choose when to spend time in here based on your available loadout and the spiral you're in. In the circuit, if enough people enter the portal to Duviri, then a timer will start counting down and automatically transport you in, assigning you some random weapons if you have not already chosen one for a specific category, such as a primary or secondary. So especially in public games, there is a want to attempt to choose your frame and weapons quickly so you at least get to choose before somebody jumps the gun and forces you in. Get in the habit of quickly assessing what your options are, selecting them, then if you have time, running around and double checking that the config slots are correct on them. If you're the kind who really cares about your fashion frame, all frames and weapons that load into Duviri will load with the appearance assigned to the first config slot. If a frame has exalted weapons such as Excalibur or Titania, the config slot for their exalted weapons will be the same as the config slot for the frame that you selected. In other words, if you choose config B on Titania, her Dex Pixia will also be on config B. So if you're building your frames with Duviri in mind, make sure that everything matches up and the weapon config you want to run when you're on frame config A is the first config slot in your Dex Pixia, and B for the frame matches with B for Dex Pixia, etc. Something to keep in mind here is the relevance between your choices and the decrees you will get access to. As I mentioned, you want to load heavily into one area, melee, guns, or your frame powers. Keep that in mind when selecting your warframe and weapons. If you have a good primary, for example, choose a frame that's going to be tanky and keep you alive so you can stockpile your decrees towards making your primary massively overpowered. Keep your whole loadout in mind. I'll also note here, and again later, that if you're intending to fight the Orowyrm, you will need some kind of ranged firepower as he is immune to frame abilities and you cannot melee him. Okay, continuing through Teshin's cave, we can look over here at the blatantly out of place horse. This is how we change the look and anything else about your cave, including naming it once we get our intrinsics up to that point. Your cave will be your main mode of transportation as the drifter, and though you can't do much to power him up and his abilities are essentially worthless because of that, it is important to note that you can mount and dismount your cave in midair. Keep in mind that your drifter can take fall damage, so being able to mount in midair both helps and hurts you. Don't accidentally jump off your cave in midair and fall to your death. But if you're already falling or need a quick exit out of a cave, you can jump out the bottom and mount your cave and go. The intrinsic involved with your cave will allow to get these extra abilities and be generally more functional, but for the most part, your cave is just your really slow archwing in Duviri. Speaking of intrinsics, over here we can access these and spend our intrinsics. Intrinsics are gained from most everything done in Duviri, and they are not affected by any boosters. As you gain more and level these up, you gain access to stronger abilities or things that help you. Here you'll see a complete list of the intrinsic perks, and the ones highlighted in green are the ones to focus on from each area. The most important of the categories to focus on by far is Opportunity, as this is the category that gives you more options of frames and weapons, allows you to see what your options are before you come in here, and allows you more decrees and the option to re-roll them. Which overall category you focus on after that is kind of dealer's choice, or you may choose to try and rush specific intrinsics. If you're doing a lot of stuff on your drifter rather than the undercroft, the combat and endurance trees might be worth your time sooner rather than later. Back across the way is the free flowers. Once per day you can run over here and collect some fairly random Duviri resources. Nothing complex, just run over here and get them. Back to the other side is the weapons room and training dummy. The weapons here are special in the fact that when purchased, you get a built copy for your drifter that can be used in Duviri, and you get a blueprint that you can build in your foundry for use on frames like any other weapon. In Duviri, on your drifter, each of these weapons has special perks that you'll see on screen now. The remaining two areas in here are the entrances and exits to Duviri itself and to your Dorba zone, which is the drifter's version of your orbiter, minus many of the features such as the foundry. Moving on down the list, we're going to look at the core mechanic for Duviri, the decree system. Before I forget, I want to note here that the decrees also function as save points across the game modes. If you leave Duviri, everything you've collected will be saved and awarded to you up to the last decree you got. If you haven't done Duviri at all and have no idea what a decree is, these are buffs that are based around other buffs or abilities that exist elsewhere in the game, that are given to you in groups, and you choose one from the group that then buffs your drifter and or frame for the course of this session in Duviri. These tend to make your frame extremely powerful the more you get and the more they play into your loadout. Taking melee decrees when you have a good melee, or all range decrees when you have a solid primary, are common sense. Don't forget about staying alive, and if you pay attention, some of the decrees actually play off each other, such as giving you a cold aura, then making it so that cold aura becomes a viral aura. That kind of combo can ramp up your damage extremely fast, which becomes especially important in things like the circuit, where the level scaling is much faster than normal. For the most part, treat them like mods and stack heavily into what your loadout excels at, and you'll be good. Some basic level non-frame specific combos are things like augment that gives corrosive damage on a weapon, each stack of corrosion adds to armor, and armor adds to power strength, plus a frame that relies on damage from its abilities or needs strength for a powerful buff such as Iron Skin or Nourish. This can be amplified on certain frames like Rhino, who can get a massive amount of overshields from Iron Skin with this, or Hydroid or Saren, whose abilities proc corrosive and thus buff themselves. If you've got an interesting decree combo, drop it in the comments so we can all have fun abusing it next time we get the chance to in Duviri. While you're down there, go ahead and click the like and subscribe to support this channel and help me keep making this kind of content for you. Next, we're going to go deeper into the various game mode types and how to really take advantage of them, starting with the circuit. The circuit is just a continuous rotation of endless game modes with some special mechanics. Instead of doing endless survival, you'll do a survival, followed by a void flood, followed by an excavation, etc. The order they appear in is random, but is limited to void flood, excavation, survival, defense, exterminate, and alchemy, and the jackal assassination. The only major changes from their counterpart in other areas of the game are that survival missions are limited to 2 total life support charge spawns for the entire survival mission, and the jackal that you face here has 3 phases and exists within a bubble that you can shoot out of but not into, and will move to a new location and spawn enemies and become immune until they're all dead at the start of each phase. Enemies in this circuit consist of the same you'll see elsewhere in Duviri, but with the addition of many more Thrax units, and now the possibility of Jade Eximus. The Thrax in here do not pop out into their ghost form upon death like they do elsewhere in the game, but the Jade Eximus are just as nasty as anywhere. The only other special mechanic in here is the way decrees are collected. You will be rewarded 1 decree on each round completion, but also in each round there are 3 decree fragments. These look like glowing blue diamonds and are hidden among the map. These should always be your first priority when each round starts. They have a certain number of spawn points in each map, and after a while you get used to where they could be. But at first, start circling around the outside of the map and work your way in. Once your squad has collected 3 fragments, you will be rewarded a decree, meaning 1 decree is available from these per round. But if you miss one in a round and say collect only 2, then the first one you get from the next round will complete a decree, and you'll be at 2 of 3 once you collected all 3 in that round. The rewards from the circuit are where things get interesting. Each week on a weekly reset, a new rotation begins for the circuit in both normal and steel path versions. These rewards follow a set schedule, so you can always look to see what's coming up, and I'll put the normal circuit rotation up here for you now. As you can see, each week you'll be given an option of 3 frames to choose from. The frame you choose here will be your rewards for completing all 10 ranks of the weekly challenge. You'll get 1 piece from the frame you chose at tier 2, 1 at 5, 1 at 8, and the blueprint from hitting tier 10 in the circuit. You'll also get a specific augment for the frame you selected at tier 7. This augment will not change, meaning if you select this same frame next time it comes up in rotation, the same augment mod will be in the same spot. The rest of the tier rewards are randomized from loot tables and won't be the same between you and your buddies who's in there with you. If you continue past tier 10 in normal circuit, the rewards will be shown in the bottom right, but pull from a loot table, and generally, they suck, so it really isn't worth your time to continue pushing on normal circuit. If you have access to the steel path, the circuit rotation is on screen now. Yes, this is where all the fabled incarnates come from. In green here, I will highlight what I would call the priorities overall, with the stuff from week 5 being the top priority because torrid. Each week, you can choose 2 things from the list of rewards in Steel Path, which includes the incarnate options for the week, as well as ribbons, kuva, and things like that for if you've already collected all of the incarnates for that week. As for the rest of the rewards, Tier 9 will always be 25 Steel Essence, Tiers 2 and 8 will always be one of these 3 Arcanes, and Tiers 6 and 7 will either be one of those Arcanes, a ribbon, or a 3-day booster. Every other tier is pulled from a loot pool similar to normal circuit. These loot tables can be found on the wiki if you're curious, but they're too long for me to go into here. If you continue going past Tier 10 in the Steel Path circuit, your next reward will show in the bottom right here, but will be randomly pulled from the loot table. Unlike normal circuit, these rewards are typically arcanes, and proceeding past Tier 10 isn't a total waste of time here. Next, we will dive deeper into the Lone Story game mode. This is honestly the most basic of the 3 modes, or at least the least complex. Essentially, the Lone Story will run like a bounty would somewhere like Deimos or Earth. You'll be given 6 objectives, one after the other, and small missions or tasks to do, ranging from picking a lock on a chest to venturing to the Undercroft for 10-minute survival. After each one of these missions is completed, you'll be rewarded a decree. Once you've reached the end of these, your final mission will be to summon the big bad end guy, the Orowyrm, which we will tackle separately later, and he will be in the timestamps if you need to skip to him. The majority of these missions are fairly self-explanatory and simply rely on you understanding the core mechanic at play. Typically, you'll go activate a shrine or stand near someone in a bubble, fight some enemies, and then you'll either need to collect drops from them, or they will automatically energize the shrine, at which point you will either be rewarded with a decree and resources, or you'll need to perform a mirror event between your drifter and your operator, who is on the other side of the mirror. In those, you'll walk your operator into the light beam, walk to the next one, repeat until it either finishes or a chest appears, at which point you walk your operator into that chest. The other missions are going to either be a Kaithe race, which is just running your horse through the gates until the end, a Find the Googogs mission, where you run around in a cave and pick up the shiny things, venture into the Undercroft portal and do one of the possible circuit mission types, a mission either above or below ground where you shoot spinning doodads in the air and follow the beam to the next doodad to shoot, a basic Can You Pick the Lock mission, herding sheep, or fighting the mounted mini-boss, who basically is an extended game of stay out of the bad and shoot him or hack away at him. There are many variations of these, but they all rely on the same core mechanics, such as following the laser lines from one spinning node to the next. The only time this really changes is during the fear, anger, or sorrow spirals, where a fight with Kullervo may show up as one of the last sections of the bounty. We'll explore the Kullervo fight later, and we can try and keep some order to this video. It should be marked in the timestamps if you need to skip there. Before we tackle the Orowyrm fight, we should go over the Duviri Experience. This is the open world of Duviri. The basics of the actual missions here are the same as the Lone Story. You'll be given 6 stages of the bounty, ending in the Orowyrm with the same possibilities and occurring at those stages. If you skipped here past the Lone Story section and need more details on the missions, backtrack yourself a bit and watch that. Go ahead and swing by the like and subscribe buttons while you're at it. Show me some support so I can keep these kinds of videos coming out. Anyhow, the experience bounty part functions like the Lone Story, but all of the missions are available at their relevant spots on the map. This means you can, in theory, stack as many decrees as you want to get so overpowered that pretty much anything can be steamrolled, so it's a good path to the Orowyrm if you're lacking confidence in your loadout. As you fly around on your Kaithe, you will see many shrines and spots that all have missions available. Some missions are also available from relevant locations that cannot show up as bounty missions, such as Feeding the Maw, which is Duviri's version of fishing, where you swim around as a giant water snake dragon thing. Conservation, which is Duviri's hunting, except you just sneak up behind a void-infected animal and pet it really hard. Or playing the Shawzin that are spread around the map. Most everything else on the map is either exactly like one of the bounty missions I already described, or it uses the same core mechanics, such as running your operator in the mirror into the light. The only other 2 weird exceptions I can think of are the Komi games and puzzles. Though the Komi games appear to be fun, let's be real, you're not watching this video to learn Komi strategies, and this of course is AI controlled, so going in this pattern here on each of your turns will win every time. Puzzles are all relatively the same. Scattered throughout Duviri will be these relatively small statues with an owl on top. Some will need 2 people to open, others 1. If you activate the sides, it will start the puzzle. Somewhere near the statue, you should see some barrels. Gist of this is you need to get symbols that are inside the owl statue on these barrels. Some puzzles will require you to stand on spots or shoot spots to send a power line around to the barrel with the rotating symbol. Some barrels also do not have a spinning symbol inside them. Others will have one inside and sort of a trigger on them so you can shoot to eject the spinning thing. Some spinning things will be flashing red and set you on fire when you shoot them, and some will have a blue electric field in them that copies the symbol so you can eject the spinning thing and use it on a second empty barrel. If you see empty ones and no spinning thing, look nearby for breakable things, ranging from bushes to a menagerie of other things. I've said things a lot. Blow these up to find your spinning part that you can then pick up and throw into the barrels. Every puzzle will have some combination of these mechanics, some having multiple of them. Each barrel will not have all the symbols in it, so you have to figure out which barrels have which in order to get all the symbols to be showing across the barrels. Once you do that, the owl statue will spit out rewards, and this is where the Cinta bow pieces drop, albeit at a pretty low drop rate. Once you understand the basic puzzle concepts, they all get put together at the Archarbor, which is the biggest of these puzzles. The Archarbor only appears during joy, envy, and sorrow spirals, and will be this island in the northeast of your map, except I'm not sure there is a north here, so the upper right? If your intrinsics are high enough to fast travel, you can head straight to where we're going to start with this explanation. If not, you're going here. When you get here, you're looking for a panel that looks like this. It's in the same spot in each of these areas. It will be a hackable security system using the usual Duviri lock type, and once you hack the lock, it will open the ground up behind the panel. We aren't going to go in here yet. Instead, we're going to look around the area for a statue that has a push bar attached to it. We're going to push that statue until it faces the center of the Archarbor, and we're going to jump back on our cave and move to the northern mini-island and do the same thing. Hack the console, move the statue, move to the southeastern mini-island, and do it all one more time. Once you've moved all three statues to face the center, then we will come back over to the southwestern one with the fast travel point, and we will actually go down the stairs. Follow the path all the way down, and you'll find a well-looking thing with a control panel on it. Activate the panel, and this will open the center of the puzzle up. Come back up the stairs, mount up, and jump in the air and dive down under the middle part of the island and into the room here. This is the main puzzle, and the mechanics should look familiar if you've been doing any of these others. What makes this one so complicated is that there are 8 symbols you need to match. You can't see half of them, and every mechanic from all the other puzzles is thrown into this. So let's dig in. First off, if you stand back a bit and look at the center line of symbols from top to bottom, these are going to be numbered 1 through 8. Each one of the puzzle barrels around this room corresponds to one of these. If you work best in a 3-dimensional environment, here's their locations from my drifter's point of view, with a top-down view put in the corner. Here's a larger top-down view, if that's what works best for you. From where you're looking, behind you will be 3 familiar-looking methods to pop out the spinning part of these puzzle barrels. 1 you push it, the other 2 you shoot in some manner. Take these and go fill the barrels on the right side of this room so you can start getting the symbols lined up. Remember, these 4 on the right side are 6, 4, 3, and 1. So we need to get them to correspond to the 6th one down, the 4th one down, the 3rd one down, and the very top one. With 4 and 6, pay as close of attention as you can to what you can see. You're seeing the center line across the puzzle icon, and sometimes there are some nuanced curves or things like that that can give away which icon it is. Your puzzle will obviously be different than mine, but the same strategy will apply. Once you've set them, you can see in the main center line of the symbols that the fully visible ones that you've set, in this case 1 and 3, will have a circle around them to show that you've got them correct. Once they're for sure correct, you'll notice that on the number 4 barrel, there's a switch you can shoot that ejects the spinning part and leaves the symbol imprinted on the barrel, much like the other puzzles have done. Eject it, and take your remaining spinning item and stick them in the barrels to the left side. Same thing here as the first side. Remember that flashy red symbols will burn you, so you need to heal. And the order from the inside to outside is 7, 5, 8, and 2. Once you've landed all 8 correctly, your decree will be awarded and the rewards will go into your inventory. If you still have some wrong, go take a closer look and keep trying. There isn't really a way to fail this puzzle. Just remember that you can pop out the spinning parts and move them between the barrel that imprints it and another barrel if you think you have that one wrong. One last note here about the experience is that it's also going to be your best place to farm every Duviri material except Rune Marrow, which is exclusively found in the Undercroft, so the circuit is your best bet for that. We'll look at the specific ways to farm the various resources towards the end of this video, as it's a long list, and I think it would be more effective to hit them all at once then. Keep in mind that getting a decree saves your progress, and nowhere has as many available decrees as the experience. Once you come in here to farm or do a Nightwave mission, just do the nearest mission you can find to attain the decree, and then you can open your menu and leave Duviri if you want. So let's look at how to handle Kullervo if you came into Duviri during the anger, sorrow, or fear spirals and you want to face Kullervo. If you're on the lone story, you just kind of have to hope that the Kullervo fight is selected as one of the last 2 missions in the bounty. If you're on the experience, it's a different story. Looking at your map during one of these spirals, you'll see an island in the south that isn't there on the other spirals. This is Kullervo's hole. He's not extremely difficult, but he's also not a pushover, so come prepared with a decent selection of decrees and you'll be more than fine. The game suggests at least 5, but I'd say that's a solid number if your decrees aren't total trash. If you're in the experience and had trash decrees and want to grab 1 or 2 extras on your way to Kullervo's hold, it isn't a half bad idea. When you get to the arena that occupies the majority of Kullervo's island, you see a tower structure that comes up on one side of the arena. On the ledge overlooking the arena from here, you'll find the Warden, and he is who you talk to start the Kullervo fight. If he can't be interacted with and you still have missions to be done on your experience bounty, that means he's already registered to be one of the 6 missions there, and you need to just go do the marked missions until he comes up. If you can talk to him and start the mission, it will start a timer and drag your team into the fight on the floor of the arena. Kullervo will come out of the gate on one side and the fight will start. He's 90% a melee-only fighter. You can treat him as such and either kite him around the arena while blasting him in the face, use someone on your team as a distraction, tank, while everyone else wails on him. Whatever method you prefer for big melee guys and the rest of Duviri should work here. After you drag down his first health bar, he will go back to the gate and come out again with a new set of skills. This entire fight pretty much boils down to don't stand in the bad and roll out of the way, which isn't overly complicated. He'll throw some knives, roll out of the way, shoot him in the face, keep doing it. Once his second health bar is gone, he will go back to the gate last time and come out with some minions. They're all pretty easily dispatched of, but focus on them first so they don't team up and take out someone. Take out the minions, take him out in the same manner as before, and this time he'll kneel down so you receive your decree for beating him. You'll also receive between 4 and 8 Kullervo's Bane for defeating him, depending on whether you're on normal or steel path. You will not actually be rewarded with the Bane until you defeat the Orowyrm, however, so don't stop your run short of the Orowyrm fight and screw yourself out of your items. These are what you turn into Akrathis to purchase parts of Kullervo and his shotgun, the Rauta. Okay, so you've stabbed, slashed, pew-pewed your way through the map in the Undercroft and the Lone Story or the Experience. The final mission arises and Teshin tells you to grab his Orowyrm, which isn't as bad as you... Wait, no, okay, let's back that up. What Teshin says to you go hit your activate button on the marker, which will be the Orowyrm. If you've hit a certain point in the game, the mechanics here will be similar. The Orowyrm is a glaive type weapon, except this one you can throw from the back of your cave while flying, and that's how we're going to chase down the Orowyrm. The worm will always spawn at the giant arms and come flying out. Some people feel the need to go wait by the arms, but that's pointless once you know how to do this, and impossible if you're running this solo. Once the worm is out, it will start shooting balls of energy from above its head. These will be color related to the spiral you're in, and hold the appropriate element related to which we went over earlier. Green, poison, red, fire, you get the point. As these energy balls come flying at you, you want to actually fly right at them, but use your fire button to throw the Orowyrm at the balls. If you miss them, you're going to get blasted, probably fall off your horse. If you hit them, however, they explode into a vortex that when you fly into it will rocket your cave forward. The objective here is to hit one, rocket forward, hit another, rinse and repeat until you can use that extra momentum to catch up with the Orowyrm, who despite his ludicrous size, is much faster than you. Once you get close enough, you'll start seeing some glowing blue spots pop up along his sides. These are grapple points. If you look at one, use your fire button while it's glowing blue, your drifter will throw their Orowyrm to it and use it like Batman's grappling gun to yank themselves over and grab onto the worm. Should seem similar depending on your story progress and the rest of the game. Here is where things will get a little divergent, so we'll try and make sure we cover everything. Whether you're on steel path or normal, the objective here is to use the grapple points on each segment to progress up to the head by jumping off, looking to the next grapple point while in midair and throw your Orowyrm at it to chain to that, leapfrogging your way up his body. When you're doing this, on both normal and steel path, there will be little tiny dragons flying around and shooting at you. You're pretty much going to ignore them as they will very rarely hit you, and there isn't much you can do about them. If they do hit you, you'll get knocked off the worm, and if you're fast enough, you can grapple back, but only if you've got enough intrinsics that you can survive the elemental damage over time effect that you get slapped with. If you're not an uber beefy drifter, you're either going to fall to your death or die to the element while falling. Just respawn, jump back on your Kaithe, and go through the process of catching back up to the worm. Also, while you're progressing toward the head of this thing, a ring of white energy will occasionally spawn around the body and move its way back toward the tail. Keep an eye out for this, and when you see it coming, time your jump to leap out of the way and then grapple back to the other side of the ring. If it hits you, you get knocked off and the same sort of situation happens. Worm really doesn't like you being on its back. In the steel path version of this fight, there will also be several rings around the worm's back and a sort of lockpick puzzle you have to go through. This map here shows a lighter colored line where all the rings are supposed to point. You'll see these arrows, one for each ring. When you grapple to the spot by the ring, you'll be able to use your activate button to rotate the ring. When you do, you'll see the associated arrow move around. You want to rotate the ring until that arrow is inside the highlighted area. You'll also notice that when it gets there, the ring turns yellow. It means you can actually kind of ignore this whole icon system and just rotate each ring until it turns yellow, but you know, why would we have all this extra stuff if you can just do that? Anyway, rotate the ring until it turns yellow, move forward, grapple your way to the next ring, rotate it until it turns yellow, rinse and repeat, all the while watching out for the white ring and hoping the tiny dragons don't hit you. Once all the rings are in the highlighted area and yellow, or if you're on normal, you reached the head ages ago, wonder what the crap I'm talking about with the rings and highlighted areas, you're going to grapple over here to the point closest to the head, and you should have an option to activate and to use your transference and take over the Orowyrm. If you're on the steel path and you don't have the option to control when you get to this last spot, you missed a ring somewhere, or your genius teammate is back there somewhere spinning rings with no idea what they're doing because they didn't watch this video. Tell them to come watch it. Once you've taken control of the worm, its controls are fairly simple, with your fire button breathing its breath weapon, basic hover flight movement controls, and your sprint will make you go faster. You'll see two marked towers. Head towards the one closest to you, use your fire button within about 200 meters to huff, puff, and blow the tower to smithereens. Turn around, sprint to the next tower, do the same. Then head towards the marked entrance to the portal. Once you get the worm into the portal, congratulations, you've made it to Phase 2 of the Orowyrm fight. Now back to things getting really different between normal and steel path, so we'll tackle them completely separately. On normal, he will spawn with 3 rings, and you shoot the rings until they blow up. He'll spawn some Duviri enemies around the area, you kill enough, and Teshin will start jibber-jabbering, and more rings will appear. Blow those up, the worm spawns tiny dragons and sets the arena on fire with the dragon's elemental fire. Kill the dragons, he spawns the rings, kill the rings, you win. Kind of self-explanatory, and I'm pretty sure Teshin says something about what to do each phase, but honestly, he tucks through your whole time in Duviri, and most people pay 0 attention to him by the time you get to the Orowyrm. If at any point while you're in here shooting the rings, Teshin decides you suck, he will send in some pity arch guns that will spawn in the middle of the arena. Go grab one, and should tear up any enemies or rings that are still there. Generally, always focus on the rings if they are up, as they are what progresses or ends the fight, whether or not any enemies also exist. Downing the Orowyrm on normal will reward you 10 Pathos clamps. On steel path, things get a little more complicated. The first set of rings is blown up, every player's Kaithe will spawn in the center of the arena. Go grab any one of those Kaithes, it doesn't have to be yours, and fly to the outside track around the arena. In a couple of seconds, the worm nukes the inside of the arena and starts blasting things out into the track, while also summoning the tiny worm dragons that fly around the track. Fly your horse around the track and kill all the dragons until the center of the arena opens back up. Fly in there while the worm nukes the track. Rings will spawn, you go back to blowing these up, and he'll spawn tiny dragons and set the arena on fire like on normal. Kill those, then he spawns new rings, blow those up to win. Same as with normal, but far more likely here, if Teshin decides you aren't doing enough damage, then arch guns will appear in the center of the arena for you to grab and dish out some extra damage. Downing the worm on Steel Path rewards you 15 Pathos clamps. After you've beat them, it will transport you to the bottom of the stairs where Acrithis' shop will be nearby if you choose to visit it. Keep in mind that all your mission rewards are not officially in your inventory until you've ended the entire mission, which means leaving Duviri. So you can't spend Pathos Clamps or Kullervo's Bane that you just earned with Acrithis here. Once you exit here, you can visit Acrithis either via the Dorma Zone from your start chart or the exit from Teshin's cave, or you can find her marker where she's set up shop inside the Duviri Experience. Okay, merch, I've done the circuit, got me some incarnates, done the experience, got me Kullervo. Even got one of the weapons from the cave. What the crap is all this stuff I need to build any of it? Well, Tenno, as I said earlier, we'll talk about resource farming. That's what we're going to do, speed dating style, with plants. Yeah, this is getting weird. Anyway, if you have a rank 5 Drifter Intrinsics that shows resources, it can be useful here. As can a 2x drop booster if you have that running, and the decree added with the Jade Shadows gives you the extra resources from plants and such. Keep in mind that the places I list here are not the only places to find these things. Many can be found all over the map. I'm just giving you where I found them most consistently. So here's our list of resources that can be found in Duviri, and we're going to go over them now. Agrostone, found in rocky areas all over the map. Looks like this. Conla Sprout, looks like this. Find it around here. Drackroot, looks like this. Find it here. Ivani, this thing. Find it in the Amphitheater and the Archarbor. At least one of these two areas will be available no matter what spiral you're in. Kovnik. I had the best luck around Mythila's farm. Looks like this. Sagan's Pearl, Sagan's Pearl, Sagin, I don't know. This stuff. You see it in pretty much any civilized looking area on the map with buildings and such. Sylphzella. These plants are the weird yellow pollen in the sky floating above them. They're kind of everywhere. Tesoma Extract. Find this in caves. Specifically, this cave has been my best luck. Looks like this. Uyamag. Umag, I don't know. These funky cacti. Kullervo's Hold is the best place by far. If it's not up in the spiral you're in, try here in the Nethermere. Yao Shrub, I don't know. Snow areas down here in the Netherbarrow region, it's pretty common, but honestly, I stumble into it everywhere. Looks like this. Lamentus. Kildax. Anywhere. Rune Marrow. These things inside the Undercroft, most effectively farmed in the circuit. Enigma Gyrum. Enigma Gyrum. Man, I can't pronounce these things. 1 baseline for solving an owl puzzle, 5 for solving the Archarbor Puzzle. You wouldn't think double resource boosters would work on these, but they do. Pathos Clamps. Defeat the Orowyrm. Get 10 in normal, 15 in Steel Path. Kullervo's Bane. Defeat Kullervo. Get 4 to 6 in normal, 6 to 8 in Steel Path. Okay, Ariata Scale, Nacreous Pebbles, and Mawfangs all come from feeding the Maw. Mawfangs are rare drop, so you don't get them every time. Thankfully, you can just keep feeding it from the same spot to farm these relatively quick. If you get a perfect score, meaning you fill the little bar before the timer runs out, you'll have a chance at one of these special Duviri fish dropping as well. It has no resource value, but can be put in the fish tanks in your orbiter. Just a few more things here, and I swear you should never have questions about how to do things in Duviri. So take a break, grab a drink, click like and subscribe, and stick out the last few minutes with me. First, the Cinta. I already touched on that. If you skipped here, do the Enigma puzzles. The parts are also tradable, so you can buy or trade for it for another player. For the courtly Shawzin, some of the missions in the experience are walking up to a Shawzin and playing a song on it. If you've never played a Shawzin on here, it's basically a wonky version of Guitar Hero. The commands on each platform are different, but it usually consists of hitting a key or a button in a direction at the same time to the beat of the music. Honestly, it's just a practice thing. I still suck at it. But once you get the concept, you can beat these pretty easily, and if you beat all 12 in the experience on Virtuoso, you will get the courtly Shawzin as a reward. Here is a map of all 12 Shawzin locations. The Fragments. There are a lot of these, and they could probably be a video on their own if you need one. Here is the map with their locations marked and color-coded. Not fancy, but they're not usually that difficult to see if you know where to actually look, hence the map. So with most kinds of these quests in video games, the difficulty is less the challenge than the time commitment it is to go hunt all of them. So finally, that brings us to the Somachord Fragments. But March, I can't use my gear wheel to scan them. I know. Good thing you walked up to it and checked in to see if you could just hit X on it before you freaked out, isn't it? Let's go grab these real quick. Here's a map of them all, numbered and such, and we're just going to go in order. It's fragment number 1. There's a big tent right in the middle of the Throne Guard Barracks. Run inside. Here's your fragment. Fragment 2. If you come to Titan's Rest and head off the side of the map and then start coming back towards it, you'll see this underground sort of city thing going on. Come in here, look for the statue, and then off to your left of the statue, you'll see some stairs you can follow down. Inside this little room here will be your fragment. Fragment 3 is in Kullervo's hold. This is probably the most complicated of them. But you're going to come here right next to the teleport place, past the statue over here, and you'll find another statue. Guess what you're going to do with this? Just like the Archarbor, we're going to rotate this in to face the center of Kullervo's hold. It's kind of hard to tell what direction you're facing as you get spun around yourself on here, so if you need to check the map to see what direction you're facing, make sure to do that. After this one's spun in place, we're going to jump over here on our cave, and we're going to take off across the little section. Swooping down over here, past the little market, over to the other side of the building. We're just going to run behind this building here, and here is another statue. We're just going to circle it inwards. After that one's facing inside, we're going to take off to the third one of these, which you're actually just going to mount up over here and dive over the edge, because it's going to be the fastest way to get here. Underneath this little island, you will see a little tiny mini island for you to land on with another statue. Face that one in towards the center, and that should open up where we're going next. Mount up, come back up on top, and go inside the arena. Inside, you see a door at the top of the stairs that you want to go inside. Down this hallway a little, and you'll see a console on the left, which you should now actually be able to open. We tried this before, it didn't open up. Hack the console, come inside, all sorts of weird little things in here. The primary thing you care about is, in fact, your Somachord Fragment. We go from super complicated to super easy. Come to the portal spot in Castletown, go to the left of the bridge over here, and voila, Fragment. Fragment 5 is in Primrose Village. Just land at the other side of the bridge, come over here to the left, go down in this little cave, and right here is your Somachord Fragment. Fragment 6 is off to the east of Watershed Hamlet. In between these two holes in the ground, you'll find a hole that's a cave. Go down in here, and off to the side, even though I apparently got lost coming in here, off behind this box is going to be your fragment. Fragment number 7 is in the amphitheater. From the teleport spot, you're going to take off and fly straight across the island to these little bitty islands in the northwest. You're going to try not to fall off the edge like I did. But as you can see over here on the smallest of these little islands, when you take off, is going to be your Somachord Fragment. Just good luck landing there. Fragment 8 is in the Citadel. You come in from the south side, land and go into this building on the left. It is right inside here behind the statue. Fragment 9 is going to be in Upper Haven. If you take off from the teleport point and fly right over here, land inside the courtyard, then pull a 180, and back in this little alley you will find your fragment. And finally, Fragment 10, the Archarbor. From the teleport point, you're just going to take up over here to the right next to the bridge. And you're going to go inside the main section of the Archarbor on this floor, and here you will find your fragment. Okay, that should be it. If you stuck through this with me for 45 minutes, you're probably as crazy as I am for making this video, but I hope it helps some of you out and clarifies some of the Duviri confusion. If this helped you at all, you want to see more videos like this, but not as long, please go ahead and hit that like, subscribe, bell, and all those good buttons down there that help YouTube decide people need to see this. And I'll catch you all on the next one. Happy hunting, Tenno.